Hello. I think we have just been sitting talking to ourselves with no recording going on and nothing happening for over half an hour. But we did have great fun, didn't we?
Oh, we had a great time, yeah.
It was the best show ever. That was the best show we've ever
Sorry,
done.
you've missed it.
By a long shot. Anyway, so we're going to start again. We're going to do a little condensed version, I think, of what we were talking about and see what we can capture about what we were saying. So welcome. And I'm really, really sorry about the mix-up. I'm really sorry. I don't know. Our internet, it does try us occasionally.
It certainly
does,
doesn't it? Yeah, we just had a whole it was just saying you're not unable to connect, and we kept thinking, oh no, it'll connect in a minute. So we dutifully carried on with the show, and after about half an hour it decided it wasn't there. So whatever we just said in that last half an hour, we're going to try and recap some of it so that it does pick it up. And this might be a slightly shorter show, but we'll try and get through.
Let's see what happens
and share. Yeah,
once we get talking,
we'll see. It might just flow. Should we dive straight into living and learning?
Yeah, okay. Do you not want to really, really quickly? I really want to tell people about our 5-day challenge that is coming up, that's starting on Monday. There is a link under this, I think, and if not, we'll make sure there is one. So it's all around money. Please join us because it's going to be absolutely fabulous.
We love challenge days.
And of course our conference.
Yeah, and really the conference. Yeah, if you haven't heard about that yet, where have you been? Our conference is the 14th to the 16th of November, all around kind of this understanding and how that fits with mental health and well-being. It would be great to have you with us, and you can find out lots more about that on our website.
So our living and learning for this week. Yeah. So having just
shared all this, let's try again and see if we can capture it all again.
So this week, when we were talking about what our living and learning was, Bec and I ended up having a conversation, and we decided that we've learned something together this week.
We did, didn't we? We had a real special moment just about an hour or so ago.
Yeah,
we'd actually just said, what could our living and learning be? And then it was like God said, here's your answer.
Yeah, it did feel rather like that.
Yeah.
So we are about 70 something days into our 90-day challenge all around relationships that we're doing. And one of the things at the beginning of that, we asked everyone to make a commitment. And my commitment during that time was to be kinder. And I noticed that there was a situation arose during this week, and in that situation I didn't feel as if I was particularly kind. And so just like this afternoon, we were sitting working, and I just suddenly said to Bec, this isn't sitting well for me. I don't feel like I was kind around that situation, and I feel like I want to rectify that, even if it is just acknowledging for myself that I wasn't kind there, because I want to be kinder. So then we ended up having a whole conversation, didn't we, around how easy it is to fall into that place of what I felt that I had done around this was judge somebody else. And I kind of thought, who am I to judge someone else? That isn't my place, and it doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel fair that I did that. So
we ended up having this really, really nice conversation, it was really interesting to me, because kind of what Deb talked about, and we won't share the details of the situation because it does involve someone else and it wouldn't be fair to share what kind of happened. But the situation for us, how we responded to it internally and kind of amongst ourselves, is the bit that we kind of on reflection felt we actually weren't very kind there. And when Deb kind of sat there earlier today and said, do you know, I'm not feeling quite right about this situation, we had a little bit of a back and forth. And one of the things I said to Deb was actually about a week ago, one of the things I just jotted down on a piece of paper, that I want to stop being quite so sort of judgmental. And you know, when you get into those conversations where you just happen to be talking about someone or something, and you just find yourself being a bit kind of bitchy, a bit whiny, a bit moany about people and stuff, and being judgmental. And it doesn't come with a nice feeling.
No.
It's one of those where a couple of minutes into it, you're kind of there, or certainly this is what my experience has been, where I'm like, this isn't me. I'm not like an unkind person, and I don't want to be an unkind person. And so we had this whole conversation about what had gone on for us around this situation was we'd actually gone right into being unkind, and we'd kind of, as happens, spiraled each other into that. You know, one of us started and the other went, yeah, that's true, they shouldn't, this shouldn't have happened. And we got right into the kind of unkindness and the judgment of someone. And actually, in the conversation we had earlier, we kind of said, hey, let's be more accountable for this. Let's be more, when these kind of things happen, which they do inevitably as humans, you know, we kind of like to judge and talk about people a little bit, and it's easy to get into. Let's be more accountable for that, and let's kind of say to each other, actually, do we want to go down this conversational route? Do we want to be this unkind about people? And come back to being kinder. And that always starts with us. So in the midst of that conversation, what we didn't do was beat ourselves up for what's happened. And what we did do was agree to be kinder to ourselves and to other people in any kind of situation like this in the future. And I think we've kind of agreed that going forward, we're going to hold each other accountable to that.
Yeah, and I really want to kind of impress that bit about kindness starts with ourselves, and this isn't about beating ourselves up for what we did do or didn't do. And very much, you know, if there's somebody listening to this and they're thinking, oh, you know, I'm not kind enough, I'm not a nice person, that isn't what we're pointing towards. Absolutely not. Because what I have seen is around this, what I see is I want to be the change that I would like to see out in the world. And I would love there to be just more kindness out in the world. And being unkind to myself because I'm not kind just puts more unkindness out there. So this is absolutely not about this. This was an acknowledgement and a noticing of something that I did that I didn't particularly like that I did, but from a very kind place in myself. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I noticed that, and that isn't really what I want to do. And one thing that we have really noticed about sustainable change is it doesn't come from a place of force and push and not liking and being, you know, upset about. It comes from a place of acceptance and seeing, yeah, do you know what, I'm human sometimes, and that wasn't my finest moment, and I accept that. And just a kind of an awareness. And I think now we are aware, we've had that conversation, we're aware of that. I just think it's going to happen. It's not something we're going to have to do.
No.
And I also think that we're going to slip from time to time.
Sure.
You know, I think we're going to still be human. We're still going to be. But, you know, the commitment to be kinder to me is very much about noticing places that I'm not kind, being very kind to myself about that, and sort of acknowledging it, accepting it, and letting life unfold from there. And I think it unfolds very differently from that place.
Yeah, for sure. So that was kind of our little snippet of our living and learning. But we'd love to actually hear from you guys about whether that's bringing anything up for you, because kindness is just, it's one of those things that we very easily say, oh, you know, kindness costs nothing and kindness is it. But actually genuinely seeing that kindness is starting with you is a really nice place to live from.
Absolutely.
So we'd love to, you know, if there's anything in that that's kind of bringing up something for you, feel free to be in touch, because we're really going to kind of live that one. Now we've had that
we'll keep you informed and let you know what unfolds from here.
Yeah. So yeah, that was our living and learning. So our question this week.
Oh, is everyone really always okay? Yeah.
We could do that really quickly, actually. The answer to that one is yes. No, it's actually, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? Do you want to share first?
Yeah, it is a really interesting question. And I very much think that, you know, when we are in our head, when we are in our intellect, when we don't see the deeper truth of who we are, there are very many places where it can feel as if we absolutely are not okay. And I can absolutely hold my hands up to experiencing many times in my life where I had no idea in that moment that I was okay. All that I felt was the pressure of a situation that I was in, or, you know, whatever. It didn't feel nice. And what we're pointing to when we're kind of answering this question and saying yes, we're pointing to an okayness that is within all of us. And maybe that isn't even quite the right words. I don't know. There is an okayness, there is a space that this experience that we're having comes, you know, arises in, comes from, I don't know what the words are, but there is something deeper. Human beings are flipping amazing. Human beings are really, really awesome. And there's so much more to us than initially meets the eye. You know, what you see here, there's something deeper, there's something more to us. And I think when we look beyond our intellect, which is fabulous, when we looked beyond our, you know, the small mind that does all sorts of amazing things, which is just brilliant all on its own, when we look beyond that, there is something more. Something, I know in the first recording, or the first thing we didn't record this, you referred to it as a magic. You know, it's like magic. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is that, for me, that okayness that we point to when we say the answer is yes, everyone really is always okay. What we're pointing to is something that we can't quite capture in words. So when we say okay, that doesn't quite get it, and words aren't going to get it. So it's very much about hearing and seeing for yourself what it is we mean here. And like a couple of things that really resonate for me when I say that is peace, love, connection, and something we've talked about before is kind of our inner diamond. There's this part of us that is okay, that's undamageable, that's whole and complete, and it's that we're talking about here. And somewhere in you, you'll hear that for you, and it might not be those words, and that's fine too. But the metaphor that I kind of pointed to when we did this a few minutes ago, we had a beautiful conversation earlier in the week with one of our conference speakers, Steve Adair. And during that conversation, I can't remember what it was that brought the conversation to that point, but he used a really beautiful metaphor, which I'm going to shamelessly steal because it works really well here, about how when there's a storm out at sea, the storm kind of takes place on the surface. There's like maybe gigantic waves, you know, crashing around, but not very far down underneath those waves and that storm, there's a place in the sea where there's absolute perfect stillness, even with a storm raging around on top. There's a perfect stillness just beneath the surface. And that is kind of what we're pointing to here, that no matter what your thinking's telling you, and no matter what the situation is that you're in, there is a perfectness beneath that, just beyond that kind of apparent storm and experience that you're having. There's a perfect stillness, an okayness, a peace within you that's always there, no matter what the kind of surface storm appears to be doing.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be in a conversation just recently with Dick and Bettinger, and he was sharing something, you know, how Sid would talk about that, and he was saying about that all of us have this perfect consciousness, you know, super consciousness within us, something that we can access. And, you know, it's what he's a lot of spiritual teachers, and he would refer to as being in the now. And we all kind of, you know, that's something that we're all familiar with saying, and maybe we don't really know exactly what it means, but it's kind of like when we come to this moment, to now, then we kind of touch that perfect consciousness. And it's like, how far away is that? How far away is now, this moment? There's no distance whatsoever. And that, you know, now this moment is always perfect. It always holds that perfect okayness. And so yeah, that was kind of how Sid pointed people towards that. And yeah, the words, it's a little difficult to put into words. I've heard Michael Neal kind of said it, the closer we get to truth, it's like pointing to fire with ice. And very much this okayness, this place within us, it is very much like that, when we try to explain it to someone. And especially, you know, if you are suffering right now with some circumstances that just look shitty, that just don't look great, and it's kind of like, well, I don't know where my okayness has gone to. get that. And you know, we've had those moments, and it's not, we're not belittling that, and we're not kind of saying that get over yourself, that is easy. What we are kind of inviting you to do here is to see this place, to see this now moment, to see this okayness within yourself. And what I have seen is, when we have the courage to look there, when we dare to look in that direction, there is something magic that we can find. And then the words that come to us around this are our words. They make sense to us. And so we understand what is being pointed to in our way. And every single human being has the capacity and the ability to do that. And the reason we're so passionate about talking about it and doing our best to kind of bumble around and point people towards that is because we see what can happen out in the world when people do touch that space. And that space is available always to everybody, no matter what. And that offers such hope and such,
freedom.
Yeah. Beautiful things.
And I think when, like, that's kind of our answer to the question. And I think the invitation here is always for you to see if that's true for you.
Yeah.
Like, see where you can see that.
Don't take our word.
No, don't. Because the only reason I've experienced that is because I've looked for myself, and I know that's what you've done.
Absolutely.
And it is very much this, what we point to and what we kind of share here is for you to see for you. Because, you know, our words might sound really nice, and hopefully they do. And you might even kind of,
or
get
they might not
resonate.
resonate.
No, they might not, and that's cool too. And you might, from our words, get a little bit of a, yeah, there might be something in this. But look for you to see whether it's true for you. Can you see where that okayness or that peace or that stillness can be available to you too? Because that's where this will make the difference, when you kind of see that for you, not from our experiences of that.
So shall we move on to our topic?
Yeah, we'll dive into our topic now, I think.
Even though we could have carried on talking about it.
We could. It's one of those.
You know, if this has brought up questions, or you know, there's anything there for you, please do get in touch. We do get back to anyone that asks us questions, or anyone that leaves comments under these videos. We do answer those and get back to you. And we always love hearing what's going on for you. So yeah, so our topic this week. So we're talking about this week being, not doing.
Do you know, just as we were about to go into the topic, I had a moment of, I wish we'd called it being and doing.
Well, let's call it being and doing.
So I'm going to talk about being and doing instead. Because actually,
I guess it's just talking about the differences between.
It's kind of, what is that and how is that and why does it. So the reason I would change that, the reason I would say being and doing rather than being not doing, is because actually you've probably heard us say this before, but from what we've seen, how life works is it's all on the table. So there isn't a not here. There isn't a being not doing. There's a being and doing, and either of those is good. And kind of what I'm meaning by that is, I think the reason the topic came out as being not doing is because there's people that maybe have asked us questions or given topic ideas to us that are kind of maybe stuck in the doing of life and stuck in the overwhelm and the up in their head kind of, I've got to do this and I've got to do this and there's not enough time, but I need to do this and I should be doing this and this as well. And we can get very lost in the doing of life. And when we kind of see some of what we've already pointed to around this perfect stillness of life, there's a space where we can actually be and not be doing, that's also really beautiful. And for me, the reason I switched to being and doing is because those two things actually are almost kind of two sides of the same coin, and they're both available to us. And somehow doing from a space of being, and being when we know the stuff we can be doing, it's kind of a paradoxical space that we can live from. There's something paradoxical about the nature of how we live our lives. And it's that what we talk about as taking responsibility whilst knowing we're not responsible. Taking responsibility, I think when when we realized about half an hour in, that our YouTube show had just not been working at all, and we'd spent half an hour telling you some wonderful stuff that you were never going to hear. We kind of had a moment where we said, what should we do? Should we go back on and do a really quick, sorry it didn't work, see you next week? Shall we go back on and do a full show? How should we? And we kind of just agreed, let's take the responsibility to turn up again, share what we share, and see how long we want to talk for. We might, finish a bit earlier. We might do, a lot longer. Who knows? But the responsibility there, the doing there for us was to come back and do what we can do. And the being part of that for us was, let's just see what kind of unfolds and where life takes us with the show tonight, because it didn't quite go how we imagined.
And isn't life good at that? Not quite going how we imagine it to, how we decided to. But what I'm seeing more and more about life is that we can trust it. The being, not doing. What I've seen is that there's a lot less for me to do here. It used to feel that there was a million plates that I had to spin and that I had to keep spinning, and that were my responsibility to do. And I would get incredibly tired. I would get incredibly stressed. I would get incredibly overwhelmed, because I would just feel like there were so many things. And I know I read something that you wrote the other day, and it kind of said, even, I'd have all these plates spinning, and then I would absolutely dread one of them crashing to the ground, because then I would have a mess to clear up as well on top of everything else. And that kind of it brings it up brilliantly, doesn't it? That was the place that I used to be doing stuff from. And what I've noticed, since the more that I trust in life, and the more that I see that the doing of life is already done. There isn't anything. It just feels like my showing up is so easy, so simple, so much lighter and freer, from that place of understanding a little bit more, just a tiny little bit more, about that space of okayness, that space that we were talking about before, kind of showing up from there. What I end up doing, it has a completely different energy, a completely different feeling to it, from this place of seeing that life's got this lifing thing without me having to interfere with it, without me having to do anything. And what I do from that place of knowing, I don't know, it just feels so much lighter and so much easier to show up and do what makes sense to me from that place. It feels all of those things. It feels kinder, it feels freer, it feels lighter. It's a really good place to live from. And I guess it grows out of, everything that we're pointing towards, beginning to understand, knowing a little bit more deeply who you are, and sort of knowing that you don't really know a lot, actually. Because you don't have to. It's not on your shoulders.
No, it was, as you were kind of sharing there about the more trust in life, I came back again to the metaphor of the aeroplane, the training pilot. So there was, I don't know, was it Michael Neal?
That was where I heard it from.
You first heard the story from Michael Neal.
Don't know where he got it from. He probably shamelessly stole it from
I'm
somewhere.
sure. But it's about a pilot who's in training, who's in his, I don't know a lot about plane lingo, so
aircraft.
We'll just, he's in his aircraft, and he's on a training program, and so he's kind of flying his plane, and at some point the plane appears to be taking a bit of a nosedive. It's not, it's not flying properly. And so he's talking to the kind of tower, the ground control tower, and saying, plane's taking a nosedive. I've lost it here. What do I do? What buttons do I press? How do I control this plane? And he's kind of here, there, and everywhere, all over. And the tower comes back through his ear and kind of says, listen, this is a training aircraft. So actually it will self-right. You can let go of the controls and it will self-right. Just let go and you will self-right. And he's there going, okay, I don't think you're hearing me right. No, the plane's going to crash if I don't press the right buttons and do the right things here. Tell me what buttons I need to press. And they're coming back. Let go of the controls. It will self-right. There is no doing here. You can just let go. And so this kind of goes on back and forward for a few minutes. And after a little while, the kind of pilot thinks, okay, I haven't got this. They're not telling me the buttons. I'm just going to have to close my eyes and let go. And he does. He closes his eyes and lets go of the controls. And what do you know? The aircraft self-rights and, brings itself back to balance, slowly brings itself back into land gently, and it's perfectly fine. And that is, I think, what we're pointing to with this being, not doing. We are so desperate to hold the controls, press the right buttons, telling, life, no, you're not hearing me. I need to hold on tighter. I need to press the right buttons.
I need to do more and
what is it?
Harder and faster and bigger.
What am I not doing? And life's going, let go of the controls. Life's got this. The universe has got this. God's got this. Let go of the controls and be. And that's it. And that's kind of, for me, that story really captures it, because we are so intent on tightly holding on to the controls and getting this right that we forget to see that life's got this.
And you can really see, if you actually stop and think for a moment, if you imagine yourself in a plane that's hurtling towards the floor and you are the pilot of that plane, it would be, you can understand why you wouldn't hear let go of those controls.
It's very counterintuitive.
It is, it's going against every kind of fiber of your being probably to do that. And I can very much see, when we look beyond what we see, beyond what our five senses tell us, we begin to see that life is incredibly paradoxical. Life is incredibly counterintuitive. And yet, when I guess the way that we do challenges, the way that we play around, the way that we invite you to get curious, it's all about investigating, what actually happens if we follow that. We follow ground control and do let go of those controls. And so I would kind of invite you at first to do it in places that maybe don't look quite as dangerous as an airplane. To kind of do it with little things in your life. Just notice, what happens if it looks to me like I really need to control this situation. What if I don't? What if I just let it play out and let it be? And find out, as we're always saying, see what you see for yourself, because what you see for yourself will be worth way more than any words we can share with you. We can point you in the direction. We can kind of say, it's like this, it's almost this, it's kind of this. But within you have the ability to go in this direction, to see something and watch your life transform in ways that maybe just don't look possible right now.
Yeah. And it's absolutely that, when I was saying at the beginning about the being and doing rather than being not doing, because it just feels like life takes on a whole different ease, freedom, when we see that it is all on the table, when we see that, because to me the doing part of that example was the doing that he had to do was let go. The kind of that's not really a doing, and yet it sort of was. And to me it's that when it's all on the table, we don't kind of then, what doesn't seem to happen, and certainly isn't happening in our lives, is that we've stepped back into trust. And most of the time we are trusting life, apart from when we forget. And it doesn't feel to me like we're not actually doing anything in life anymore. Somehow we're still turning up and doing
it feels
stuff.
To me as if we have more time and more space to do all sorts of really nice things, actually. Definitely there are days when it feels to me like we choose to do stuff.
It's a totally different space.
We go out around the beach, we go to the beach around here, we take advantage of this beautiful place that we live. We certainly have a lot of fun. There are not many days when we're
not doing something, but it's that doing from a totally different space of trusting that what we actually do is perfectly okay too. And somehow from that space, it doesn't feel like this plate spinning that we both used to live in. It doesn't feel like there's 10
the plates are in a pile waiting for the cake.
That's basically it. The space we kind of live from when we see that we can trust life is plates are for one thing and one thing only: cake, food. Cake, food, And that definitely, when we talk about, it's all on the table, even cake, it's all on the table, is about seeing that trust in life, that in a given moment, if there's something to do, you actually find you're doing it, rather than this kind of fighting with what needs to be doing, or fighting to do something, or there's just not this fight anymore. That's the difference I see in my life. I'm not fighting life anymore. I'm just living it.
Or even allowing it to live through us, it kind of feels, doesn't it? I think
it just
there's so much less to do than it appears. And that's kind of what I love. Life feels a little bit like a holiday. It feels a little bit like a fun game, because it just seems like when I was in that doing place, it felt like there was a lot to do and a lot on my shoulders. And now it kind of it just doesn't feel like that. And yet the reality of it is we probably do more, not less, weirdly.
I would say we do more, not less. That would be my if you actually kind of tallied it up. And that is the kind of, that's that paradox again, that when we talk about being, not doing, we don't actually mean that we're not doing anything. That's the kind of paradox here, is that somehow we are doing, but it doesn't feel like the burden and the weight of that is on our shoulders in the way it used to look like it was. So I think that was a whistle-stop tour of the show.
Yes, it certainly was a bit of a condensed version, but
the full show. But hopefully, fingers crossed, next week it'll all be. So next week our topic is security. Where does it come from?
And our question next week is all around jealousy. We've just put jealousy on the board, so I don't quite
the actual question. Shall I share where it came from? Because this is quite a nice one. We've just finished a video series that went out on our newsletter to our mailing list, and the video series was how do I deal with ... And each video we talked about a different kind of emotion or situation, and as soon as that finished, we had somebody that came back and said, oh, can you do one on jealousy? And that hadn't been, the video series had actually finished, and it hadn't been one that kind of cropped up by that point. But we thought, actually, that's quite a nice one that probably a lot of people, and I know definitely for me, has been something we've struggled
something
with.
We've felt, yes, you've had that feeling from time to time.
So we liked that, and we thought, actually, we'll do that as a question on our YouTube show next week. So the question itself is, how do I deal with jealousy? So that's what we're going to talk about next week.
So before we kind of end it for tonight, I'd just like to remind you about our 5-day challenge, our totally free 5-day challenge. That is all about money. That is starting on Monday. We would absolutely love to have you with us. We'd love to have you as a part of that. And don't forget our conference that's coming up, because it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be so good. So we'd love to see you either on the challenge or at the conference, or both, because why not?
Absolutely.
And if you want to know more about that, the information will be in the details below.
And if you want to work with us in any way, if you'd like to dive deeper into any of the things that we talk about, if you want to know that, please get in touch with us, because we are always, we have mentoring and all sorts of exciting things that we do, if you would like to do that with us.
Thank you very much for joining us and bearing with
us. Yes, with today's show.
And we'll hopefully see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.